The term neocon was used very frequently in the 2016 election. And again, with our increased involvement in Iran, Israel, Syria, the Middle East as a whole, we've again seen an increase in the term's usage. However, despite this increased usage, a lot of us do not know the origins of the term or really even what neoconservatives believe. So in this video, I'd like to break down for you exactly what neocons believe and where their beliefs come from. Most of us would likely associate the term neocon with somebody who has an aggressive outlook on foreign affairs, one that's pro-war, pro-nation building, democracy planting. And that's true because neocons believe that American power, if unused in every arena, is useless. It's wasted. If we don't use our power in every arena possible, then we have wasted it. We have not reached our full exceptional American potential. They believe that our power, and primarily our military power, our military strength, should be used to propagate our American ideals throughout the world. Now, this takes the form in democracy planting. We go and overthrow a regime that is probably hostile to America, sometimes not hostile to America, and we plant a democracy there and we choose to build up their nation. The reason they do this is because of a belief in what's called the democratic peace hypothesis. This hypothesis states that in theory, democratic countries do not go to war with each other because if the people control the government, people don't want war, they don't want to go fight a war for no reason. So democratic countries will not go to war without a solid reason. Another reason that could play into why neocons believe in planting democracies is a holdover from the Trotskyism that played a part in the foundational ideas of neoconservatism. The original neocons were Trotskyist communists. This is a belief in Marxism, but in opposition to Stalinism. Trotsky, who was one of the leaders in the Bolshevik Revolution, there from the beginning, he was opposed to Stalinism because he felt that the Soviet Union had become too bureaucratic. He believed that it should be more democratic, more controlled by the people, and he believed that you could not focus on a single nation. In order for communism to really work, you had to look at the economy as a global system, not a national one. So that meant that they essentially required other nations to have communist revolutions in order for the Soviet-Russian revolution to really matter and to take hold and reside permanently. It's called the permanent revolution. So you see from the beginning that neoconservatives do not get their ideas from a conservative place. They do not originate from conservatism. Neocons even consider their foreign policy Wilsonian. They're referencing Woodrow Wilson, President Woodrow Wilson, who was the first progressive Democrat. He thought that America's power, our interest, was fostering safety for democracy in the world. Again, not coming from a conservative place. And the truth is that neocons really are not conservative at all. They started out as disillusioned liberals in the 60s. It started in about the 50s. The thoughts started earlier in groups like the New York Intellectuals. There's even some ties between the New York Intellectuals and the magazines that they wrote in, and the Frankfurt School, which fathered the famous critical theory that's promoted the social cultural Marxism that we're all so familiar with these days. But a lot of these original neocons like Irving Kristol, Norman Podhoretz, which will sound familiar if you're familiar with Bill Kristol and John Podhoretz, two of the famous modern neocons. Bill Kristol having worked in the Bush administration pushing the Iraq War. But these, what would eventually become neocons in the 1960s, they supported the war. They supported spreading America's interests. They supported stopping the advance of Stalinist communism into other countries. So they supported the Vietnam War, whereas the modern left went further and further into an anti-war stance. So they were, from that point, very disillusioned with the rest of the liberal movement. So the truth is that these are not conservative people coming into a new form of conservatism. These are liberals trying to conserve a certain form of liberalism. They also believe that some religion is good, but that separation of church and state is an overall good thing. So some religion, but not too.
All right, big broadcast today lined up with great guests. Free speech is under attack. I'm going to be joined by a free speech attorney, Mark Randazza, on the other side. But first, here's a report from Leanne McAdoo.
Today's action sends a critical message. The United States no longer makes empty threats. When I make promises, I keep them.
President Trump makes it a point to let the world know that he is a man of his word and that the U.S. is no longer making empty threats. So, in that vein, we need to take what he says seriously and not let it slide when the president is venting about all of the negative news coverage of him and threatening reporters to revoke their credentials or revoke the licensing of major news networks. You know, he says that they're reporting fake news about him, and they very well may be, but this is something that a president or a future tyrant could use to shut down independent voices. President Trump lashed out again this week at reporters who covered him negatively following the publication of a survey from the Media Research Center. It showed a dramatic negative news slant from the top 3 networks and their coverage about the president. The group studied all broadcast evening news coverage of the president from January 1st through April 30th, and they found that 90% of the evaluated comments about Trump were negative. And this is the same hostile tone that they documented in 2017. And they went on to say, despite all of this hostile coverage, Trump's overall job of media rating actually rose. The Media Research Center didn't even include CNN or MSNBC in its research. Can you imagine? It would have been closer to 100% negative coverage. Now, I get it why President Trump has long been critical of the White House press corps coverage of him. He's branded them fake news, called them the enemy of the American people. You know, I can't blame him. The media has been out for blood ever since Trump beat their preferred candidate, Hillary Clinton. With that being said, the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment says that the federal government cannot take any action abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. The ability for journalists to do their jobs and the First Amendment itself should not be tampered with just because we are in a current state of crisis with overtly negative news coverage of our president and we're having to sift through. We don't even know if it's real or if it's fake. So just because that's the current state of the fourth estate does not mean that we should be shutting down the ability of journalists to do their jobs. And of course, Matt Drudge, he posted a rare personal tweet to warn about what could be next from the White House. Drudge tweeted, "I fear the future result of Trump's crusade of fake news will be licensing of all reporters. Democrats already floated this in the Senate pre-Trump. The mop on this issue is going to be excruciating. Government registration and licensing requirements of journalists and reporters would mean that they get to determine who is allowed to disseminate their views to the public. And of course, it would be whoever is sifted through and filtered through and approved by the powers that be." Back in 2013, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein proposed amending a media shield law. She wanted to limit the law's protections to only real reporters. And according to Madam Feinstein, a real reporter is a salaried agent of a media company like the New York Times or ABC News. So if you're a blogger or you work in alternative media or you're a student journalist or an independent citizen who's out there with the phone capturing things that are of value to the public interest, you would not be protected under this amendment. The Free Flow of Information Act is meant to preserve the right of journalists to refuse to disclose their sources, even if they're under oath. But the amendment, of course, I labeled it at the time, false flag legislation, meant to turn free speech into a privilege because it would diminish the ability of independent journalists to safely conduct their valid research and go find corruption with big corporations and everything. They would be open to government subpoenas and legal action. that taken by those that they were investigating and reporting on. So fake news or not?
It is May 11th, 2018. This is the War Room. I'm your host, Owen Schroyer. Mark Randazza is in studio with me. We're going to talk about free speech, the attacks on free speech, how they use lawsuits to attack free speech and to demonize people. We're going to get into all of that. Matt Bracken will be joining me as well. Roger Stone takes over the second hour, and then Fleckus talks in the third hour. So a loaded broadcast. And we may actually go back into the time capsule and show you a little video we put together about Mad Maxine Waters. Boy, did she do a number on the floor of Congress, moaning and complaining about being a victim. A millionaire black woman who's been in government for decades, griping about her life. Give me a break. So we're going to have all of that. In the meantime, you've got the Wall Street Journal reporting about the FBI, Comey's FBI, having a mole in the Trump campaign. So that breaks. They're trying to prop up this Mueller probe right now that's totally falling apart. So we'll have more on that later, as well as other developments like the judge awarding $3.5 million to different Tea Party groups for the Obama IRS targeting scandal. So we'll have all of that news and more as well. But first, my guest, Mark Randazza, is in studio with me. Now, Mark, you are a free speech attorney. You've seen free speech cases all over the world. You've studied free speech law all over the world. And the one thing about here in America that we have that most other countries don't have is a right to free speech. We have the First Amendment. It's built. It's what this country was founded upon. So we can always go back to that. But it seems right now it's kind of being interpreted different ways. Some people think free speech is one thing. Some people think free speech is another thing. But we were talking about this before. What happened to, I may disagree with what you say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it. I feel like we've lost that mantra in the West.
Well, let me just correct one thing. We're not the only ones with a right to freedom of expression. The EU Constitution protects freedom of expression. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms does the same thing. I think our First Amendment has been more broadly interpreted, and we were for a long.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, why are you a cowboy? Show me the video.
Can you type it?
I'm not.
Time, and I still think in some ways we are a beacon for freedom of expression. You know, it was anywhere that you wanted to point out a positive example for a commitment to freedom of expression, you pointed to the United States. You know, and one place where we really diverged from other common law countries and other free civil law countries is that we have this. You know, if you read the case New York Times versus Sullivan, it discusses a profound national commitment to wide open and robust debate. You read passages like that, and if you have any sense, you know, in your soul of being an American or what being an American is, those passages from New York Times versus Sullivan are so just star-spangled awesome. You know, that's the kind of stuff.
That's a landmark case.
It is, yes. I mean, it is the case that establishes that we can, when we criticize people who are in the government, or we criticize, it's been expanded to mean not just public officials, but public figures, that any time we want to criticize them, there's a really heightened state that a plaintiff has to get over in order to silence you or in order to punish you for that. It is probably the high water mark for freedom of expression globally. Because, you know, the Canadians considered it in Hill versus Church of Scientology and rejected it. Other countries, you know, I've looked at, for example, Zambian law. I was working on a defamation case in Zambia, and Zambian law rejects it.
Yeah, you know, it's defamation in Zambia. Hey, they have it as tough there as it is here.
To bring a defamation suit? No, it's a little easier. Most of the world has far more of a commitment to for a little less of a commitment, I would say, at least when it comes to private defamation suits.
So I think the debate now that we're having is, okay, so we may not be having the immediate threat from the government. I mean, there are lawmakers out there that have said certain things that you could view as a threat to free speech, but outside of the realm of government, where you have landmark cases, you have the First Amendment, it seems like the real attacks are coming from industry. The real attacks are coming from these social media giants where everybody's there, and that's kind of the means for communication, and they're deciding what gets seen, what doesn't get seen. So now I think that there's two debates. One, do you have the right as Facebook, as Twitter, to censor whoever you want and to decide what content goes out upon your platforms?
Right.
And then two, do you now have to look at certain regulations to make sure that these platforms have free speech? So I think that we're kind of in the middle of that right now, and there really isn't a legal precedent for this debate, at least that I know of.
You know, I mean, I think we got to be specific when we're talking First Amendment versus free speech. And, you know, it's the value that underlies the First Amendment. You said before that, you know, I disagree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death your right to say it. A quote that is misattributed to Voltaire, but still, if you, you know,
I said that.
It really,
hundreds of years ago.
it really wraps it up when you say that. You know, when you see, you know, when you saw, for example, when you know, Alan Dershowitz was standing up for the rights of Nazis to march. I mean, that right there is such. If aliens came down and said, "Explain what America is," I would say it's that idea right there. Somebody, you know, we have a Jewish lawyer standing up for the rights of somebody who espouses his extermination. That's just like, that just makes you want to, like, you know, you just see eagles in red, white, and blue at that moment. That's what it means, because people don't. You know, when you want to think about what is America, I try to explain this to people when I go to Europe and I talk about freedom of expression, and I say, look, America is not. There's no such thing as quote unquote an American ethnically, right? You know, genetically, I don't know what the hell you are, but, you know, I'm Sicilian and Swedish. I don't think we share any common ancestors back to, you know, probably maybe Lucy at some point, you know, in Ethiopia, right? But you know, right now there's somebody in Hawaii, a native Hawaiian, and someone in Key West, and someone descended from slaves. You know, we are all in this mix together, but it's not an ethno-state. It's not a religious state. You know, it's not like Israel where everybody's bound by Judaism, or Albania where everybody's bound by being Albanian. America's just an idea. That idea means anything. It means a commitment to freedom of expression and the rule of law. And when you start saying you want to throw that out because you have a political tribe that you've created that you think is somehow superior to that idea, like that just means that the idea is in danger of being extinguished.
So when you say right now, if free speech is under attack in America, would you say it's more of a legal issue or more of a cultural issue?
It's both, really. You know, because you were right when you said earlier that it's somewhat a legal frontier, because we want to say that private businesses can make a decision about who they're going to serve. So you don't have to have me on this show if you don't like what I have to say. You stop this interview right now and say, "Be gone with you." That's not violating my First Amendment rights. But I could also go out there and I could say what I want on my own internet channel. But what happens when you get targeted? And what happens when you have this cartel of, you know, just a few companies that are all philosophically aligned, who simply decide that one piece of the debate doesn't belong? And then that circle grows, and it grows further and further, because they're drunk with power right now. And when our free speech rights, at one time, the internet had this promise that it was going to bring every voice to the marketplace of ideas. It did initially, right? I mean, it was, you know, when the internet first came out, you had all these crazy websites with any number of things. It was both entertaining, Wild West. It was entertaining and informative. It would have all these new news sites came out that were bringing news to you that the legacy media didn't bring you. I mean, heck, porn, the ubiquity of, you know, I don't just bring that irreverently. Like top 3 sites or something after a couple of sites or something were all porn or something. But you know, porn drove the growth.
But you know, let's get into what could be a legal issue with this when it comes to the attacks culturally on free speech that could end up as a defamation suit potentially. Yeah. So we'll get to that on the other side with Mark Randazza. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to the War Room. Mark Randazza in studio with me. We were just having a brief conversation with Alex Jones. America, as you were saying, is an idea.
Yeah.
And part of that idea, what we were discussing earlier, is a commitment. It's a mutual commitment, a mutual understanding of independence, of freedom, where everybody in the tribe understands that you have a commitment to free speech. You have a commitment to even the freedom to bear an arm, to arm yourself, protect your family, have private property, have privacy. You know, that is the cultural, the intellectual commitment that you make in the idea of America. And now, as you're saying, these private corporations have gotten so powerful and so drunk with power. Well, they're kind of breaking that social compact. They're kind of deciding to go off on their own, and they think they're bigger than the tribe. They are. And so now, so this is where we come to. So now we enter this new thing where you say, okay, when do you decide something is public forum, and when do you decide when the government can tell you what you can and can't do? And I use this case, and I want to hear what you think about this. So we had a famous case, I'm sure you're familiar with it, where a gay couple wanted a cake shop to bake a cake for their wedding. Well, they said, no, we're not going to do this. Sorry, go down the street. Well, they sued. They won the lawsuit. So now that's the government telling you, you have to serve these people. So that, to me, is an attack on their free speech to say no. But then why doesn't that same, if we're going to go down that road, right, wouldn't you say that same precedent should apply to Twitter and Facebook, where you say, hey, look, then, you have to include InfoWars. You may hate us, but you have to include us.
It's a little different because in that Masterpiece Bake Shop case, what you had is, first you have anti-discrimination laws. So you can't discriminate against a customer because of their sexual orientation in most states. Now, I think that's just fine. And in that case, had the customer simply come in and wanted to buy something that was there and been discriminated against, I would say that the shop was wrong. But in that case, you're actually asking the person who is making the cake to make something that is in opposition to their beliefs. It violates their freedom of conscience to do it. And that is compelled speech. So in that circumstance, you know, while I disagree with the bake shop owner, I mean, I'm profoundly committed to gay rights. I think gay marriage is a wonderful thing. If they want to be miserable like the rest of us, let them be it. But
apparently they're less miserable. Their divorce rates are lower.
Are they? Well, you know, hey.
Let me just interrupt and let me ask this question, because that's my point. I would bake the cake. If I open up my shop, I would just bake the cake unless they wanted me to put pedophile stuff on it or something. And that's what there's going to be some level, religious, cultural, or just moral reasons to be able to say, I dissent to this.
Sure.
I personally, you know, make up a cake, whatever. I mean, I want their business. I don't care. I'm libertarian. But what if I was an Orthodox Jewish shop and I wanted them to put, you know, to roast a pig for me? You know, they're a meat shop. I come in and say, I want you to roast a pig for me. They're like, no, we're Orthodox Jews. We don't involve ourselves with pork. Or what if they're Muslims? And I come in and I want them to do something. I mean, at a certain point, let's say Muslims, you know, own an animal grooming shop, but they think dogs are unclean. I bring my dog in. They say our religion is we don't clean dogs, which is in Islam. And the dog's an evil creature. But that's a real problem with Islam. But the whole point is, it's kind of like Islam because it's not open and free. That's why I'm always pissed at it. So, and then I'm told, oh, but accept it. So getting back to the pig issue, you know, what if, or what if it was a Jewish-owned bakery and I wanted them to say G God or just spell God all the way out? And the Orthodox Jews in New York said, we're not doing that. That's blasphemy. Do I get $500,000 from them?
That's a good example. You know, if you did come in and you wanted, for example, as a Christian, you wanted some scripture that was antithetical to the beliefs of the Jewish cake shop owner, and he says, you know, look, I'm really sorry. Here's a cake with nothing written on it. You're free to use my, I don't know what the heck you call it, thing, whatever. Free to use this to write it yourself, but, you know, I'm very sorry, but I can't do that. I don't think he's discriminating against the Christians. Similarly, you know, if this bake shop owner, I just can't believe that the civil rights battle of our time has come down to, you know, baking a damn cake. But, you know, it really has.
It had to be some sort of gay rights thing. That's, you know,
it's really, you know, one of the things that, you know, when you saw gay marriage passing, I think, you know, the culture was ready for it. Most of us were ready for it. I thought it was a wonderful thing. But, you know, one of the promises was, look, nobody's going to try to, like, impose their values on you. People said, well, if gay marriage is okay, well, then my marriage means nothing. I said, well, then your marriage must be kind of really screwed up if it has any influence on your marriage at all. But it doesn't intrude on you. But now when you have somebody being compelled to create something, even something so trifling as frosting on a cake, that takes this thing that was pure before, just a pure fight about liberty, a pure fight about equality, and now uses it as a cudgel in the culture war.
Exactly.
And
It's
that's
gone
wrong.
to this level now where they say don't have mother and father on entrance exams or on entrance, forms for schools, and it's becoming law. And so it's the next level of, okay, I'm an open free society guy, I'm a tolerance guy. Now you're going to force feed me it. That's what's dangerous. And now you're allied with the big tech giants. Not just saying ban Alex Jones from the internet, but then misrepresent what I've said and then not let me even respond. That's where I'm getting concerned.
But see, here's where when we bring it back to this internet debate, where what I just told you can be used right back against us. Because I have a problem. Imagine if there was only one cake company in the entire country, or some cake conglomerate went and bought up every cake shop, and then said they weren't going to do it. Now you've got another situation.
Which is kind of the direction we're going in right now with the internet and the free speech on social media.
You need to hold the big, powerful group more than fast, and then little people need to have a big group. That's not sure. Big, massive groups are the ones that need the chains on. But instead, like you said, they're free.
Or at some point, maybe the antitrust department can wake up and do its job. I mean,
That's been a long time coming. That's beyond just social media.
Right, but if it would wake up and do its job, I mean, the fact is that when you have this ubiquity, when you have this huge control of the market for social media, Facebook is the only social media company left. Friendster, it's a lost civilization, right? I'm probably not even old enough to remember Friendster.
I don't know Friendster.
Yeah, so there's like ruins somewhere that you can find that lost civilization. But when you have that, and then you have them using that to squelch the marketplace of ideas, it's, I hate to use this term, but it's damn un-American. So this is the problem. And you do have, we talked about in the break, you do have some kind of legal theory here that...
I don't mean to interrupt, because I don't know what you guys take over, but I'm watching. When you come back, you get your legal theory now, but I want to ask you, what is the solution? Because I agree. They create these things bigger than governments, bigger than the whole economies, like Facebook. They created a monopoly with it open free. Now they're taking it away. Now they blurred us in like a cartoon where the cat tongue rolls out, the mouse thinks it's a bar that's going into. Now that we're in its mouth, it's closing its jaws. What do we do to stop that? And like you said earlier, that's just power mad, the arrogance of these groups and organizations. I think the public first has to recognize this is happening.
Well, as far as what you can do about it, there are, I have, if I was smart enough to know how to fix it, I'd probably be,
social media.
Yeah, so I'm probably not that bright, but I will give you some bright ideas.
But then, and this is what we were talking about in the break too, how do you even compete when Facebook is already in the system, where all the commercials, all the marketing, it all goes to Facebook, it all directs to Google, it all directs to Twitter. I mean, that's what you do now. You see anyone on TV, they do an interview, boom, there's their Facebook, boom, there's their Twitter. So it's already kind of intertwined in our culture.
They have a market position that, is...
All right, we're going to go to break. We're going to get more to this on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Mark Randazza is my guest, randazza.com. He has all kinds of legal experience dealing with free speech, the First Amendment, in fact, all over the world. Matt Bracken is going to be joining us soon as well. But I want to give you the platform here, Mark, to explain something we were getting into. We got a bunch of precedents and a bunch of questions that we need to get into, but you think there's kind of some groundwork that can be laid now if people had more of an understanding of the legal system that's already there.
There can, yeah. I mean, like these big platforms, I think there is one way of looking at them. There's an old decision called Pruneyard, which holds that even when something's private property, it can become a public forum if it functions as a public forum. Now, civil libertarians have a problem with this because it also looks at private property and essentially takes it as a public forum. So this is not a theory that is without its dangers. But there's another thing, and how these companies got so big. And one is that they've enjoyed this tremendous immunity under what's called Section 230. So back in the Clinton administration, they passed what was called this Communications Decency Act. And what it was is it was supposed to get porn off the internet. And how'd that work out?
That's funny. That's like the war on drugs. Supposed to keep drugs off the streets. How'd that work?
Yeah, it didn't work out well at all. But also the Supreme Court struck down the Communications Decency Act, but left intact an immunity that was left there. So it's really an accidental immunity. But what it does is it says that, for example, if somebody posts something defamatory about you on Facebook, well, you sue the person who posted it. You can't sue Facebook because they have this federal immunity. Same thing with Twitter. You can't sue Twitter if somebody puts something defamatory on it, unless Twitter actually makes the content themselves. And everybody loved this idea, but now we see these companies have grown so big and so powerful and so untouchable in large part because of this. Well, what are they giving us back in exchange for this immunity? This isn't constitutional immunity. This is just a statute, and an accidental one at that. And I would suggest that if they want to enjoy that immunity, well, they need to give something back. And they should only enjoy that immunity if they also agree to subject themselves to the same regulations that government would be under in a First Amendment case. So if they can censor on the basis of viewpoint, and if they do censor on the basis of viewpoint, then take away their Section 230 immunity. And let's see, do they believe more in free speech, or do they believe more in that immunity? And I think they're going to like that immunity so much that they're also going to finally embrace the First Amendment.
Well, and I think that brings me back to the question of, okay, are you going to be a public forum, right? Or are you going to stay independent? When I said in the break, they're playing both sides of the ball. Sure, they claim to be public forum. Oh yeah, we're not involved. We want our hands. We don't want our hands tied. We don't want to have to deal with regulation and monitoring things. That's how they can kind of throw their hands up and claim innocence.
Right.
If a terrorist, recruits somebody on their social. Oh, we're not a public forum. We don't monitor everything. We're too big. But they do. They do monitor everything. They do have the algorithms. They do censor certain free speech that they disagree with. So they're kind of playing both sides of the aisle there. I want to bring Matt Brackett in, who is joining us now to discuss this. I think that this is an issue where we really don't have legal precedent right now, but we could be on the verge of seeing something soon when it comes to this, Matt. Matt, I'm sure that you're familiar with all the censorship that conservatives, Trump supporters are dealing with right now on these big social media platforms. I mean, what do you think the answer is to dealing with these social media giants?
I'm not convinced that we're not already too far behind the curve, that the giants like Google and Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they're so massive now. I think they have more power than Congress. When Zuckerberg went to those hearings, it was like little puppy dogs, in front of a giant megalon. Even though he was so little, he needed to sit in a booster seat. Clearly, the power is not with Congress anymore. Not to mention that they can contribute to every politician out there, make them all dependent on Facebook, so that they don't even care. Really, Facebook, I think, can do whatever it wants. Same thing with Google, Alphabet, YouTube, all of them. It might be too late. We might already be talking about how to keep the horses in the barn, but the horses are gone.
Yeah, actually, Matt brings up a great point here, Mark, where a lot of the people that were even questioning Mark Zuckerberg were donors or used Facebook. So there was already a prior relationship there. Why no recusal?
Look, if you're a politician and you want to take on Google and Facebook, that's going to take a tremendous amount of courage, because Facebook has shown, all of these platforms have shown, if they want to shut you off for being a Nazi, you can do that. So by that same token, if you don't need to be a Nazi, you just need to be anti-Facebook. If you decide you want to do anything to regulate them or anything to take away their immunity under Section 230 that I mentioned, heck, that's taking on the dragon. So maybe you have a politician or two who's got the cojones to do it. I doubt it, and I haven't seen a single one of them that's had that. Maybe Maxine Waters will do it.
I doubt it. Matt, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think that in Europe they're trying to do some sort of an internet bill of rights. It'll probably go nowhere, but it's interesting, some of the ideas that they're trying to push through. One is that the algorithms, the weighting algorithms, should be public. Now, we all know how, if you put InfoWars in Google, the first 5 things that come up are derogatory slime against Alex Jones, etc. That's just how they work. But what we should at least get is some transparency about the algorithms. If everybody, for example, on Twitter or Facebook is weighted with a 1.0, and if you're a bad comrade, you get progressively diminished to say a 0.5 or 0.4. Alex Jones' show gets a 0.5. The show I'm trying to link to through YouTube gets a 0.5. You multiply these together and we're getting like a 0.1, meaning we have no reach. Our power is nothing. But if you're a comrade, if you're a social justice warrior, you get a 1.5. All of your favorite websites get a 1.5. The same exact person making the same comments has 10 times the reach. So I at least would like to see that we can see the algorithms. How are they doing the weighting and the shadow banning and the throttling? That would be a step. Because as long as we control the levers, we're never going to be able to succeed at this.
Now, Mark, would that be something that they could do to give themselves legal cover if they said, all right, look, here is how we censor, or here's our algorithms, and then, so if you want to complain, hey, you knew that when you signed up. Oh, I don't think they need that. They already have legal cover. I mean, Google has had a couple of cases where people have sued because of how their search engine results are being gamed. Like Google finds people who are doing, for example, there was a company who was doing SEO optimization. Google doesn't want competition in that field. So what Google did is they de-indexed everything that this company had as far as in its SEO, in its website network. And that brings us back to the debate. Is that an antitrust thing, or does Google have the right to free speech to do that?
Well, it does have 2 courts so far that I'm aware of. There might be more, but so far there have been 2 trial court decisions that have said that Google's way of expressing its results are First Amendment protected. Now, I have a little bit of a problem with that because it's essentially giving a computer program First Amendment rights. And, I'm not ready to give ourselves over to artificial intelligence rights that I have. Maybe one day that'll be considered to be discrimination against the robots. But, I say,
you better watch out.
I say, hey, the hell with our new robot overlords. Meat should have rights, not machines. But, they don't really need that cover that you're talking about. They already have it. So, the other way that it can be dealt with is maybe there are enough people that could create a competitor to Google that wouldn't do that. But Google already does it. Google already have such deep tentacles into so many different areas. Would it be almost impossible to compete with them? I mean, you're going to use DuckDuckGo, and I would encourage you.
I've used DuckDuckGo. There's another one, like
Bing.
ABC or something.
Bing, and I accidentally use Bing once in a while.
Yeah, and you can see the difference. It's in the search results when you use all the different SEOs. So, hey, we'll be right back. Matt Bracken, Mark Randazza is with me. We're going to talk more about the attacks on free speech and what we do philosophically moving forward to deal with it. We'll be right back. All right, final segment here with Mark Randazza and Matt Bracken, and I'm going to give the floor real quick to Mark to make a statement. We're then going to get Matt's reaction to that, but I just first want to say this, and I've said this in the past, but I think we need to consider the philosophy of which we approach law and justice. I always ask this question. Are we a land of laws, or are we a land of justice? And to me, there is a big difference between the two. I believe the laws are in place in order to maintain justice, but there's certain cases and certain elements where sometimes the laws are not actually getting us justice, and we need to look at the case and say, you know what? Let's actually look what is justice in this case instead of what is legal. That's my philosophy. Mark and Matt, feel free to respond to that. But I want to go to Mark for some final comments, and then Matt. So you were saying, though, it's about a mental thing culturally where we all have to commit to free speech and say, hey, even though I disagree with you, what's at least the right to speak whatever we want.
Yeah, and I think that is all in.
Dude, I love you.
If you lose sight of that, you lose sight of the idea of what America is. And I'm sure most of the people watching this show are either right-leaning or conservative-leaning, and where you should be most
concerned you like what I'm rocking?
Speech is with people you don't agree with. Those idiots in Antifa want to say something, you should be instinctively protecting them. You know, a few weeks ago, there was a professor at Fresno State who said terrible things about Barbara Bush after she died, and people were calling for her to be fired because of it. Wrong. The right-thinking people who were, and there were a lot of conservatives, to their credit, who stood up for her free speech rights, and that's what you have to do. When you hear speech that you hate, when you hear speech that just makes you want to choke, that is the exact moment when your instincts should compel you to stand up to protect it, no matter how vile or no matter how awful it is. That's what this country's about. And if you lay that aside because your tribe doesn't like that speech, you're a traitor to the Constitution. Matt Brad.
Well, let me say about the Fresno professor. I wouldn't say call for her to be fired based on what she said, but I'm glad they record her, and I'm glad that it's being exposed, the depth of this, you know, 100-year Gramscian rot from within, to where the typical professor now
אני מתקשר לגבי, אני פשוט הייתי פה באינטרנט, ראיתי שאתם מוכרים אוזניות. אוקיי, אז תגיד לי רגע, קודם כל יש משלוחים. איפה אתם נמצאים? התקשרתי לנקסט-טק, קוראים לכם? אוקיי, אז רגע, אני אגיד לך איזה מוצר אני רוצה, קוראים לזה אוזניות בלוטוס JBL E55BT. זה מוכר לך? אוקיי, קודם כל יש להם גם מיקרופון. אני יכול לשלם לכם בפייפל? מה אתם מקבלים? איפה בפתח תקווה? אני פשוט גר בקריית אונו, אז תגיד לי בערך זה... כן, אבל באיזה צד זה של פתח תקווה? קרוב לקניון, בוא נגיד ככה, זה קרוב לקניון הגדול של פתח תקווה? כן, את זה אני מבין. אוקיי, פשוט רציתי רק לוודא שאני לא הולך עכשיו להגיע לאזור תעשייה שם בצד השני. סבבה, אז אני רק רוצה לוודא לגבי האוזניות האלה, JBL E55BT, קודם כל מיקרופון יש להם. טוב, אני אגיד לך רגע בקצרה ממש רק את הצרכים שלי, שנוודא שבאמת זה עונה לי על הצרכים. אני רוצה לצאת לריצה, להקשיב למוזיקה בסמארטפון בלי חוט, שיהיה אלחוטי, עם בלוטוס, עד כאן זה אפשרי? אוקיי. לחזור הביתה, לחבר את הבלוטוס במקום למכשיר סמארטפון ללפטופ, וללכת להסתובב בבית, לבשל, למרפסת, הכל, בלי חוט, עם הבלוטוס. אבל הפעם ללפטופ, לא לסמארטפון, זה בסדר? אוקיי. ואני גם רוצה לדבר עם המשפחה שנמצאים בארצות הברית, עם דרך הלפטופ, השאלה אם... זה אמרנו שיש להם מיקרופון, אז אין בעיה. אוקיי, עכשיו המיקרופון שלהם הוא בולט כזה עם אנטנה, או שהוא מובנה... אוקיי, עכשיו אם הוא מובנה בפנים, זה עדיין יהיה באיכות בסדר, האיכות? אוקיי, אני לא קונה כל יום אוזניות, אני לא מבין בזה יותר מדי. טוב, אז יצאנו לריצה, חזרתי הביתה וזה, עכשיו תגיד לי אם אני רוצה לשחק משחקי מחשב ולדבר עם האנשים תוך כדי. היום כרגע אני עושה את זה ופשוט הם כולם מתלוננים שהאודיו שלי הוא ברמה על הפנים. שיש... למה לא? אם עד עכשיו כאילו... אוקיי. יש לך אולי מוצר אחר שאתה כן יכול להגיד שבוודאות שהוא כן? הבנתי. לא, לדבר עם המשפחה בפייסבוק עם שיחת וידאו ולרוץ ולשמוע מוזיקה, אוקיי, אבל השאלה מה השתנה ברגע שנכנסתי למשחק מחשב, ואני רוצה בעצם לעשות משהו מאוד דומה. כן, בכל מקרה אני אבדוק את זה, אבל אתם מציעים פה באתר את המחיר הכי טוב, אז אם כן, אז אני אחזור אליכם. אבל אני פשוט מנסה, כאילו, אני מנסה להבין למה יש לך ספק, אם בעצם אני מדבר עם אנשים, כשאני מדבר עם המשפחה שלי בארצות הברית, אבל אני מדבר גם עם אנשים בתוך המשחק מחשב, גם אודיו הבנתי, אוקיי. טוב, אני אבדוק את זה, אז תודה לך. Hey, what's up, man?
Well, man. I'll be an Antifa card-carrying communist. You know, America hating. So that doesn't mean fire her for what she said, but by all means expose how rotten, you know, how corrupt, how communistic, socialist, Aztlan promoting these professors.
That's all free speech. That's an element of free speech. If I say something, you have the right to criticize what I say.
Yeah, and thank God for our founding fathers that they had the vision put in the first two amendments, because in Australia they had a mass shooting. There was no Second Amendment. Guns went away virtually. Decent guns. Britain, you can now get put in jail for what you say on social media. Basically, Islamic blasphemy laws.
See, now this is a perfect example where some guy gets thrown in jail because he makes comments with his dog dressed as Hitler. Okay, maybe there's some
Not
law.
even just having him lift his
Let's
paw.
just say that there is some law. Maybe he violates some law. Well, to me, that's not justice. That's what I'm saying.
No,
you got to think about justice here.
Well, we want to be careful because that's that idea can also be imported into. I mean, that's the argument I hear from people who don't like the First Amendment. They say, well, social justice requires that maybe we rethink freedom of expression. So
no way.
Maybe I didn't say social justice.
Well, justice, equality might demand it. There are people who say, that their humanity is not up for debate. Now, I understand how they feel, but I don't agree with them. No, even my humanity is up for debate. Everything's up for debate. That's our profound national commitment. When we break that commitment in the name of some other value, then we have broken the contract we all made with each other, during the revolution. That is the contract we have with one another since 1789, and we got to stick to it.
There's another form of censorship I'd like to touch on, which is a self-imposed kind of a circular firing squad censorship that I see quite a bit in conservative circles. This doesn't require the government imposing censorship. This isn't Google or YouTube. This is done by our own selves. I'd say probably the top 20 conservative websites are all neocon. 5 years ago, there was a big flap when Diana West put out a book called American Betrayal. She was viciously attacked by neocons, some of whom were former communists that were communists right until the Reagan era. Then they flipped and became millionaire neocons, as using their "I used to be a communist, so believe me now" bona fides. More lately, we've seen over the Kanye West and Candace Owens flap. If you go on InfoWars today, you'll be deplatformed. You'll never get on Fox, with very few exceptions. I think Roger Stone being a notable exception. He's very rare that he can
No. I just want to say you're 100% right. We're totally blacklisted, and the only people that I ever see that go on cross-platform is Cumia and Stone.
Right, and has Tony Schaefer been on? Colonel Tony
Schaefer used to go on with Alex. I haven't seen him in a while. I don't know if there's anything to that, though.
I trust my editors at CNN will still let me write for them.
On Twitter, I'm followed and follow a lot of these guys, and they'll direct message me, okay? But they won't so much as put a like next to my name. They'll direct message me about something I wrote, but they won't retweet it or even in any way leave a fingerprint, because any association, with an InfoWars kook army person means they could be blacklisted. They won't be published at Front Page Mag, American Thinker, PJ Media will all blacklist them.
Okay, see, I want to use this, and I want to take this conversation in a different direction here in the final 3 minutes, because Matt is now talking about the key issue that I wanted to get to. Defamation is almost an impossible win in this country. And, you can do it. Okay, but here's what I'm saying. For our case, here's what we would have to say. Okay, they're censoring us here, so we're losing audience here. It's like, okay, we're losing X audience, so we're losing X customers, so we're losing X dollars.
Yeah.
And as Bracken is just saying, so they dehumanize us and they demonize us, and then it's like, well, what are we supposed to do if they're doing this across all the platforms?
Look, let me tell you. Let me give you we talked earlier about New York Times versus Sullivan, and that was the high watermark for freedom of expression. In New York Times versus Sullivan, the civil rights movement was marching across the South, creating a groundswell of support for equality. And the way that these people in the South who wanted to keep the old Jim Crow system intact, the way that they fought it was they sued for defamation. It's exactly what these people are doing now. So what they did is the sheriff's office in Alabama in Montgomery, Alabama, sued the New York Times for defaming them because there's an ad in the New York Times that called them out for racist content, racist conduct. And they took it all the way to the Supreme Court to protect them. Now, that same book that Jim Crow was using then, that's what the Southern Poverty Law Center is doing right now. That's what all of these liberal groups are doing right now. They're taking a book right out of the Jim Crow law era in order to go after people that they politically disagree with. And shame on them for that. Shame on them for that hard.
So, yeah, go ahead, Matt.
It's even more subtle and psychological than that. There we're talking about, a liberal mega corporation, the New York Times, versus some Southern group. I'm talking about conservatives using a hierarchical pecking order. I mean, I have more than 3,000 reviews, high ratings, 4.7 average stars, tons of comments, but I've never been reviewed by any of the flagship, websites ever. I'm an unperson. I'm deprogrammed or delisted completely because they won't touch me with a barge pole because I write for Western Rifle Shooters Association or I've been on InfoWars. So we need to try to crack this like conservative, internecine, competitive, hierarchical, ladder climbing. Everybody is kissing everybody else's butt.
I'll just say though, I enjoy being the black sheep. I actually like being the black sheep in the media. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm glad that they blacklist us on all the mainstream news. I think that it's great, to be honest. But I mean, final comments here, Mark. I mean, so here's a perfect example where, let's say, behind the scenes, Fox News or somebody, just using them as an example, says, hey, if you associate with Bracken, you're not coming on. And so they intimidate all these people not to talk to Matt Bracken, and then it's tough for them to sell a book. I mean, is there any legal defense for Matt?
No. That's unfortunately, that is, the First Amendment doesn't always bring you the result that you want. And
that's why Matt is saying, hey, look, we need to be aware that this is happening in conservative news.
Sure. But, just like if you look at I love every year they have Banned Book Week, for example. I mean, there's really no better way to bring attention to a publication than to try to ban it.
Yeah.
So I think,
and now they're trying to erase our documentaries, off the internet too. So it's the same thing. I like being the black sheep, but it is a serious issue. It is an attack on free speech, and we should all be pro free speech. What happened to that? Matt Bracken, thank you. Mark Randazza, great stuff. We'll be right back.
Pleasure.
Welcome back to the War Room. Owen Schroyer here, about to be joined by Roger Stone. It is Richard Overton's 112th birthday today, the oldest living veteran. Here was a video that he recorded from 2015, giving Americans some advice.
Today marks the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. May 8th is celebrated as the day when German troops throughout Europe finally laid down their arms. 16 million Americans served in World War II, and more than 400,000 lives were sacrificed in the name of freedom. They're hailed as the greatest generation. So we spoke to the oldest living World War II veteran. He lives right here in Austin, Texas.
שלום, קודם כל שלום, מה שלומך? באיזה עיר אתם נמצאים? אתם מקבלים פייפל. אוקיי, ואם אני רוצה לשלם על אוזניות שעולות 470 עם פייפל, אז אתם יכולים לשלוח לי את זה פשוט? אוקיי, והמשלוח יהיה בחינם, נכון? לא, אפשר לעשות את זה בדואר רשום, אבל תזכיר לי רק איך זה עובד, כאילו אם נגיד, יש לי אינדיקציה מתי יבוא הדואר רשום? בעצם דואר רשום זה מגיע לסניף הדואר, ואז זה מגיע אליי לתיבה פתק שאומר לי לבוא לקחת. אוקיי, תוך כמה זמן זה יקרה בערך? אז שנייה, בוא נדבר עליהם קודם כל, אני פה באינטרנט. אני מסתכל, ואני רואה פה, אני אגיד לך את הדגם, JBL E55BT, בלוטות'. מוכר לך? כמה עולות? בדיוק. עכשיו בוא רגע נדבר תכלס, אני אגיד לך בדיוק, אני לא רוצה חס ושלום לקנות ובסוף להתבאס, אתה מבין? אז בוא אני אגיד לך רגע מה אני צריך, ותגיד לי רגע שהאוזניות האלה הם בשבילי. איך קוראים לך? עידו, סבבה. אני, אף פעם לא היו לי אוזניות בלוטוס, אוקיי? זו טכנולוגיה שלא השתמשתי בה, לכן אני שואל אותך כזה דבר. אם אני רוצה, יש לי סמארטפון ואני רוצה להקשיב למוזיקה שנמצאת בקבצים על המכשיר עצמו, או אפילו ברדיו, או אפילו, לא יודע, כל וריאציה של אודיו, לשים את הסמארטפון בכיס ולהקשיב לאוזניות האלה ולצאת להליכה בפארק. זה עובד? אוקיי, ואז אני מקבל שיחת טלפון בסמארטפון. לאוזניות האלה יש מיקרופון? אוקיי, ובשביל לענות לשיחה אני חייב להוציא את הסמארטפון או שאני יכול לחוץ את כפתור? אוקיי.
Richard Overton is going to be turning 109 years old on Monday. And we went out and we spoke with him. He's a really sweet man. And he offered up some tips for longevity as well. He's going to be turning 109 years old.
יש את האפשרות? אוקיי, עידו, תקשיב, אני פשוט צריך שתעשה לי טובה קטנטונת. תעשה לי טובה, אין לי בעיה שתיתן לי את השירות כמו שאתה יודע, כמו שצריך, אין בעיה, אבל תעשה טובה, אם אתה יכול, אל תשים אותי על המתנה, כי המוזיקה הזאת מפריעה לי, בסדר? פשוט זו אותה מוזיקה, גם שאני ממתין לגולן טלקום, ואני כבר השתגעתי, אתה מבין? לא יודע למה יצא כך, יש לכם אותה מוזיקה כמו גולן טלקום. אתה מכיר את גולן טלקום? אוקיי, זה חברת צלם. קיצור, כן, כאילו שמעת עליהם. בקיצור, תקשיב, אני מבחינת האוזניות האלה, אחרי שדיברתי שיחת טלפון עם הסמארטפון וגם שמעתי מוזיקה, נגיד שאני מגיע הביתה ואני רוצה להתחבר איתם לבלוטוס של הלפטופ. בלפטופ אני גם רוצה לעשות דברים דומים, לשמוע מוזיקה ואז לעשות שיחות עם המשפחה בארצות הברית, שפתאום אני מדבר איתם בפייסבוק, בסקייפ, ואנחנו עושים את זה באודיו, ואפילו גם שיחת וידאו שיש לה גם אודיו. עד כאן אין עם זה בעיה? אוקיי, אין בעיה עם זה שיחת אודיו או וידאו מצורפת, גם וידאו וגם אודיו. אוקיי, עכשיו תספר רגע על טכנולוגיית בלוטוס. אם אני הייתי בפארק עם הסמארטפון, האוזניות היו מחוברות דרך בלוטוס לסמארטפון, אבל כשאני מגיע הביתה אני צריך באופן ידני להפסיק את החיבור בלוטוס, ואז להדליק אותו מחדש ולתאם את זה עם המחשב, כי לא איך זה עובד. כן? חייב להיות באופן ידני. אוקיי, ודבר אחרון, טוב, גם אם זה לא יהיה אוטומטית, זה לא נורא. בכל מקרה, רגע, אז אם הן מלאכותיות, אז איך זה עובד מבחינת החשמל שלהם? הטענה, יש להם סוללות בפנים? אוקיי, מה זה, סוללות שהן ניתנות, או אני חייב להחליף אותן? זה דווקא אחת מהשאלות הבסיסיות, אז אתה יכול לבדוק לי את זה? כי זה באמת משהו בסיסי. אתה רוצה להגיד לי שזה משהו שלא כתוב על האריזה? לא יכול. טוב, אז אתה אומר או AA או AAA, אוקיי, אבל ניתנות או להחליף, אתה גם לא יכול להגיד לי? אוקיי, הבנתי. כאילו, אז אני פשוט היה לי בראש משהו אחר, אני חשבתי שאולי זה להטעין דרך כבל USB, כמו הסמארטפון, אבל אני מבין שזה לא. אוקיי, ותראה, אני היום, לפעמים אני משחק משחקי מחשב, ואנשים אומרים לי שהאודיו שלי הוא ברמה לא טובה, כאילו באיכות לא טובה. השאלה אם כאילו, המיקרופון שלהם, השאלה אם המיקרופון הזה הוא באיכות, או לא באיכות. אוקיי, כי פשוט אני... כן. אוקיי. פשוט אני צריך איכות, אתה מבין? ואני רואה פה גם דברים יותר יקרים מ-470 שקל, ותגיד לי אתה, אם אני אקנה משהו יותר יקר, אתה חושב שזה יהיה יותר איכותי או מה? הבנתי, אני האמת לא ממש מסתכל על מחיר באופן כללי, אני התעניינתי באלה בגלל שהן פופולריות, אוקיי? אתה, כאילו, מבחינת, אתם מוכרים אותם הרבה? כאילו, זה משהו שנמכר הרבה? אוקיי. טוב, סבבה, אז תוביל אותי בבקשה לרכישה, איך אני רוכש אותם עכשיו, אני מוכן. אני רוצה לשלם עם פייפל, ותוך כמה זמן זה יגיע בדואר רשום? אוקיי, בסדר גמור. מיתר. כן. בנדריהם. בנדריהם. בית נון ד' ריש יוד ה' מ' סופית. כתובת זה צהל 27. קריית אונו. רגע.